This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner, Trisonic. For a full range of audio, media buying, and creative services, including podcast production, check out trisonic.co.uk.
The challenge we've had in the industry, even the days when I worked at Condé Nast, you'd have photo shoot, and because it had the word shoot in the keyword list, it would block that. And perfectly, like Fashion Week in September, you'd have lots of content blocked because of the word shoot.
Welcome to the Media Leader podcast. I'm Jack Benjamin. It's no secret there are many headwinds facing publishers. Top concerns that come to mind include declining referral traffic from search and social media, as well as how generative AI could upset the digital ecosystem and potentially do so in a way that infringes upon publishers' copyright. But perhaps the biggest concern for publishers is actually one that has been going on for many years, and has in fact gotten worse: keyword blocklisting practices. This is the strategy used by brands to automatically pull advertising from articles on the web that use specific words, such as shoot or attack, or a whole host of sometimes thousands of words on a given list, that could be viewed as not brand safe. These words could occur in articles such as stories about violent attacks or war, but of course those same words are often used in articles about other subjects like sport or entertainment that aren't then as monetizable for publishers. Terry Hornsby is the founder and executive vice president of Mantis, a team originally set within the UK's largest publisher, Reach, that aims to better aid brand safety efforts for advertising by more accurately discerning whether an article is actually brand safe based on its context and not just the words used within them. I sat down with Terry to discuss the scale of issues around keyword blocking. We spoke about how common it is for advertisers to add more words to keyword block lists, but rarely do they ever take words off. That has resulted in a word like Paris remaining on many block lists amid this summer's Olympic Games because of the terrorist attacks that occurred there 9 years ago. Listen on to find out more. I hope you enjoy. Terry Hornsby, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I wanted to start by getting to know you a little better. We've talked one or two times previously, but I wanted to know a little bit about how you actually got into the media industry and what led you to founding Mantis 5 years ago now.
Yeah, so a long time ago, 20 plus years, I started out in radio, did operations trafficking, placing adverts, and then did the Sunday chart show. And I thought I was going to be a radio DJ. And that was in the Isle of Man, actually.
Oh, wow.
For Manx Radio.
Was it lonely out there?
Yeah, slightly. But yeah, no, it was good. And that got me into media. And then I moved to TalkSport, into radio as well. And then started to see sort of digital grow. And TalkSport had their own website, and we kind of built out from there. And then I moved into digital fully, into kind of the network world, specific media, moved to Fox Networks, worked for News Corp for a while. And then I moved to a startup called Give Me Sport. That was a social media, like kind of Lab Bible type, sports publisher on Facebook, and then moved over to Trinity Mirror. And then we started to buy stuff like Norwood Shell, and we had Local World that we brought as well. And then moved it more into digital strategy and programmatic, because when I started programmatic, there wasn't many people around. And it was kind of like, okay, you're going to have to set it up, sell it. And I even remember going over to set up my first PMP, where I had to go to the agency and set it up on their computer and then come back and accept it on mine. So,
oh, right, wow.
So yeah, a long time ago. But yeah, the industry's moved so quick, and it just moves every day. And then in my digital role at Reach, looking after the P&L with digital, we looked at product and commercial product, and that's where Mantis come from. Gotcha.
And so you started Mantis in 2019. How much has changed just from 2019 to now in the market overall, but then also what you guys are actually doing at Mantis? How has that developed over the past 5 years?
Yeah, so we developed it 2019, back end of 2019. Obviously, the COVID and the pandemic kind of squashed
right.
the kind of face-to-face development, but that gave us time to, again, dig deeper, double down on kind of the technology and the product. And with COVID coming out, obviously there was lots of keywords being used around COVID, and it gives us lots of learnings to be able to open up inventory that actually was COVID but safe. And that's kind of where we started to really get into the kind of the products and build out further the understanding of a pandemic, but actually it being safe, like Boris Johnson's baby. Any content around that, perfectly safe, but because it had COVID in it, the keyword block list was there in place. So that really gave us a thing. And then yeah, we've built it out from kind of 2-3 people on the kind of commercial operations side for developers now to 23. So yeah, it's grown out really far. It's now obviously B2B product, not just internal as well. So Yeah, it's changed dramatically over the last kind of 3-4 months with Fiona joining as MD as well. It's changed massively. But again, really exciting project to get involved with, really exciting to be out there and kind of solving challenges for people.
Yeah, so going back to the beginning, you mentioned sort of keyword blocking. This has been an ongoing issue, I think, facing publishers for a while. Can you explain, actually, in layman's terms, what the problem is with keyword blocking practices and how Mantis has sort of tried to come in and say, actually, some of these articles that you might have not been running advertising on are brand safe?
Yeah, and it comes down to a kind of, again, subject and really kind of blunt tools. And the challenge we've had in the industry, even the days when I worked at Condé Nast, you'd have photo shoot, and because it had the word shoot in the keyword list, it would block that. And perfectly, in like Fashion Week in September, you'd have lots of content blocked because of the word shoot. And yeah, you're right, it's never been really solved. And that was part of my challenge was, as a publisher, we were using tools that were not allowing us to unlock that inventory. It was perfectly fine, news inventory or celebrity inventory or sport inventory, and it just wasn't being used. And it was really high quality, and our editorial staff were doing really good content, and then we were finding out actually nobody can get there because they're being blocked. And I don't think necessarily I think it's an educational piece. I think it's kind of you add a keyword, you need to understand that's it, that's the wall. Right. And if you don't do anything more than that, you can't unlock it. And that was really why Mantis was created, because we needed to understand that keyword, but also in context.
And how many advertisers, ballpark sort of percentage figure, would you say are actively using keyword blocking today? Is it everyone?
I think it's a higher majority. Obviously, the open market is difficult to do that, and I don't think it did that. I think there's some advertisers and on the longer tail that probably don't. But I would say the majority, like 85% or more advertiser brands are using it. Agencies are using it as well, so it's at kind of that level as well. And I understand why you'd want to do that. You don't want your brand to be associated with an unbrand safe environment. You don't want it to be suitability as well. So making sure your brand's in the right environment. And some of them context and some of that content might be perfectly safe for another advertiser, but just not for yours, right? So I think that's kind of what we've seen evolve over time is, yes, we understand more than just keywords and we understand the context, but it's about emotion, sentiment. A prime example is it's our right and probably our duty to not allow gambling ads or stuff like that in gambling bad sentiment, right? So you wouldn't want people to read about debt and then obviously have gambling ads in that. So there's suitability as well, which I think is really important. I think safety and suitability is really important. And we've just had so many, over the years, we've had so much content blocked for no real reason.
You mentioned on that, the word shoot. In photo shoot getting blocked. That's obviously also a word that gets used in a lot of sports reporting. A story that I wrote for us last month, it was actually one of our most read stories of the month, was that Euros coverage across Reach publications, about half of advertisers were having their advertising blocked on that coverage because of words like shoot or attack, words that are commonly used both in sport but also in covering violent events. But I think it's kind of wild that so many advertisers wouldn't be careful about discerning and say, well, we really want to make sure our advertising is on sports coverage, which is, probably among the most read coverage of the entire year for a lot of Reach publications that a lot of people are reading that advertisers want to be against. It is brand safe, and they're still having it blocked because of keywords. I mean, how is this still going on? I feel like you must be having the same conversations for going back years and years, right?
Yeah, and again, it comes back to the language and the way that words are used in the English language, is that there's multiple ways. And I was using an example last week of kind of Paris and the Olympics, right? So Paris is in there for the Paris bombings.
I'm shaking my head. How Paris bombings were in 2015, right? That was 9 years ago. And there are still advertisers that are blocking the word Paris. So any coverage, let alone the Olympics, wouldn't allow advertising to be on.
No, and look, again, it comes down to, I guess, some of these keyword lists that you see are 22,000 words long. So part of the challenge that we say to people, and part of our kind of service to people, is that we'll take that keyword, we upload it into Mantis, and we suggest what words to remove. based on the fact that we know more than just the kind of keywords. We know the sentiment, the context. And it will happen constantly. I was thinking about it today that you've got the Southport, the devastating stuff that happened in Southport, and actually Southport will now be put on the list, and so will Taylor Swift party. And then you've got Taylor Swift coming up in August selling out concerts.
In London.
Yeah. So it's like a constant, and like we discussed before, news is constant, right? And I think there's meanings for all stuff, like Kaiser Chiefs, like predict a riot. There's lots of riots happening at the moment, right? If Riot gets put on a blocklist, that's going to do any concert that they come up with, or if they go to Glastonbury or do anything in the future,
right,
it'll be there. And there needs to be a constant maintaining of lists, but people are busy, they're day to day. So again, that's where, as a service, we should be able to maintain that sort of automated and sort of say, look, that Paris is associated with the Olympics. That's the bit that Mantis does, right? It associates it with the good news and the sentiment and the emotion, and it doesn't say, oh, Paris is just Paris, block everything. And that's what we need to get to. We need to don't necessarily need to get away from keyword lists in the short term, because they're good to education purposes, to show people that actually, like I saw one 6 months ago that had Paw Patrol on it.
Really?
And I was like, why has it got Paw Patrol on it? And then I realised, okay, a child had choked on a Paw Patrol toy years ago and it had been left there. And it's kind of, until you challenge that kind of, or look for them stories to understand why it's been blocked, you don't really get the necessary.
Well, but surely that strikes me as really cautious. Like, I mean, I understand that brands are sort of conservative in nature, or want to be careful about not showing up in the wrong places, but they're also missing out on so many opportunities. I mean, most articles, I imagine, about Paw Patrol are really positive, and maybe, young parents or even young children might be like reading those articles, and those might be people that could be interested in, depending on what brand you are and what you're selling them. And that strikes me as just being way too careful. I understand your point about sort of Southport, but it strikes me that a lot of brands will constantly update words by adding more words to the list, but then are they taking them off? Because why should Paris from 9 years ago still be on keyword block lists?
Yeah, no, look, I think there is a. My sense is that they don't take them off. I think they add them on, and I think they just get more go on.
Wow.
And I think that's partly because, again, without to use tools that are that blunt and only can tell that Paris is Paris. That's your challenge, right? And that's why we're trying to solve that thing with Mantis and that solution, because that Paris can be taken off if the tool allows you to. And I think that's the key thing for me, is we're introducing a tool that understands the difference with that Paris word, so that they feel comfortable taking it off. And when you talk to brands and you say, look, you can go on this content or this content, and here's the same keyword, but this is what Mantis believes it is versus other tools, and also just saying to them, look, it's okay if it's Olympics Paris, and bombing still gets blocked because it's bombing and Paris. They totally understand, but at the moment they're not armed with them tools to be able to do that. So that's really what we're trying to do, is arm them with that to make that decision to take them off and narrow down the keyword list, or even remove them.
And so, like for Paris, because there's loads of Olympics coverage, and it sounds like a lot of advertisers might not be placing against them if they have Paris on the block list, right? What's the percentage of articles that they're worried about their advertising going against, in terms of the sort of negative connotation of Paris as a place in 2015 that had terrorist attacks versus today? Because I imagine it would be almost every article today would be safe, right?
Yeah, and also you've got to think about, and I thought about this the other day, the longer the words on the list, the less traffic goes to that article, right? In a news cycle, your trend in your volume of traffic is during that kind of first period. So now all of the traffic will be going towards Paris Olympics rather than kind of the bombing stories. But that's the challenge, because that word's still blocking a whole lot. And I think that's an educational piece, and that's what we're trying to do, like across LinkedIn and the industry, to kind of chat around, think ahead, think of the Taylor Swift effect in a few weeks' time, think about whatever we can think about and sort of predict and say, look, I think this is going to happen. So don't add that word, but add that with context and understanding. And Taylor Swift concert or Taylor Swift fun and emotion and happy can work.
Right.
You don't have to block it because of the news around that. So I think that's the piece, is just how do we educate and how do we keep that consistent and show people as well, show them the URLs that are being blocked. And that's one thing we do. We're fully transparent. We show all the URLs right down to the article to say, look, these were blocked previously. They won't be now. And that's when brands go, oh, wow, okay, I don't know why I've done that, or we don't need to do that. Even like recipe stories that mention knives for chopping.
Right. Knives,
chopping, again, it's all associated with kind of bad, and that's, every recipe's safe, right? Like they're pretty safe to advertise around. And also for some advertisers, it'd be a perfect place to place your product. So yeah, education is the key thing, and just showing people it works. I think going out there and talking about it and saying, look, feel safe, remove your keywords, trust Terry. That's kind of not. I feel I'm perfectly trustworthy, but I think it's worth just showing them again. Look, actually, here's a campaign you run, and this is what was blocked, what shouldn't have been blocked, and just challenging. Go, look, do we think we can remove that now in this context? And I think that's kind of the key thing.
How many advertisers have already blocked Taylor Swift?
I don't know yet,
okay.
But that was one thing. I was thinking about it this morning, just thinking about kind of the recent news and that we've had, and riots, Taylor Swift. Like, I think that'll be our next one. I think we've just been talking about the Olympics in Paris.
Yeah.
I think again for us, it's about now like kind of what is next for that, and why is that being blocked?
Right. And so when you have these conversations with advertisers and you show them, here's all the articles that were blocked that really shouldn't have been, sort of what is their response, and are there things that they then can change and have changed going forward in terms of, are they stopping keyword blocking practice altogether? Are they adapting it to work with you guys? What's the result that you're looking for when you're working with a client?
Yeah, so the process generally is now we work alongside the current setup. And then what we do is after the first campaign, second campaign, we show them what has worked, what's not worked, what's currently happening with their process versus what would happen if they were with Mantis. And then over a period of time, we've had advertisers move to us fully, and that's the aim, is really just to show them or educate them that actually, yeah, you could remove these. And some places they're restricted by the tools they use, but other places they can adjust that strategy for any tool. But we tend to run alongside and say that we'll run alongside, we'll show you kind of what's being blocked, what's not, what's suitable. And we have thresholds at Mantis where we turn it kind of up and down, so you can be more sensitive to certain things than others. And that's not really on the safety side, but that's more the suitability side. So if they really, if a brand didn't want to be next to bread making stories for some reason, you could turn it up and say, look, bread making is not safe, or it's not in context or suitable. So again, that suitability is a key one as well, so the brands can actually target around what they think is suitable for their brands as well.
And that's something that you guys have added over time, is that sort of suitability and that contextual advertising option that people can sort of, it's not just brand safety.
No, and that was a key thing. So with the work around brand safety, the key thing for brand safety for us was adding flexibility and understanding that something might be unbrand safe for some brands and not for others, because there is certain things that are blanket unbrand safe for everybody, right? Terrorism, terrorist attacks, that's kind of the foundations of unsafe. But there was other brands that were like, actually, I'm okay with that or this, and that's where we kind of built in the thresholds. And then we realized that by doing that, we understand more about the context, and then we can positively target certain things or negatively target certain suitability. So the contextual piece has grown far quicker and probably bigger than actually the safety piece. The safety is the foundation. We essentially say now that you can create a pool of inventory that is perfectly safe, but then within that inventory, you can now target and decide what's suitable for your brand. And even down to the positive targeting of, you want to target, I don't know, festival content with wellies from Hunter, or you want to do sunglasses or sun cream for holidays, and you can now really tweak that kind of contextual piece. So that's grown out, and now we use that in the marketplaces. We give that back to publishers. So we give, when we scan their content, we provide brand safety, but we also give them contextual segments.
Interesting. It strikes me as something that, if we had been talking maybe just a few weeks ago, in terms of a post-cookie solution, that strikes me as a pretty interesting idea to be using that alongside perhaps other tools. Cookies aren't getting deprecated. Has that changed anything in terms of what your strategy is at Mantis? Are people still thinking, actually, this contextual solution could be working regardless of other ways that we might be tracking people online?
Yeah, no, the cookie doesn't change. And I'd predict now that there's going to be the same outcome will happen, but it'll be done in a different way, right?
Same outcome, meaning the cookie will essentially go the wayside.
The cookie/tracking kind of challenge, I guess, for the industry has got to change anyway. So I think there's going to be different solutions. It's just going to be a different product. But what it does allow is it allows people to test products, contextual. The performance we've seen on contextual campaigns versus cookie campaigns is 10 times X in some cases because of the relevance, right? You're putting supermarket brands in front of kind of opening time for supermarkets or recipes, or you're putting barbecue adverts in front of people looking at top 10 barbecues. That all the context is super relevant. The challenge with context has always been scale, and that's why I knew Mantis couldn't be just us. It had to be everybody, and we had to get everybody involved to get that scale for everybody. So even the smallest publishers up to the biggest publishers can use Mantis and get a part of that relevance. Also, it gives the advertisers the scale across multiple sites. So yeah, I think that there's context is so powerful when it's used in the correct way. That still will continue. And I think, again, I'm not looking to build a cookie solution for Mantis. I don't think that's the answer. I think what we're going to do is carry on the way we are. We'll improve the context and the performance we're seeing. And then we'll be set for any other products that are released that are going to be that way inclined going forward.
Talk to me a little bit about your relationship with publishers, because you were founded, inside of Reach, but you're working with other publishers as well. So actually, what are those publishers that you work with, and how's the relationship going with publishers that maybe you haven't worked with yet?
Yeah. So we've had some long-term ones. We've had like ESI and Immediate Media that work with us, and they've been long-time partners, like 12 plus months, pretty much from the sort of the start of our journey into that B2B market. Having lots of positive conversations, and we will be having some new people join the family in the next few weeks.
Can you tell me who?
I can't tell you, no. But one of them is not a UK publisher, so that's okay. Something different for us and good, and actually we're now sort of going a bit more global, which is good. But yeah, the relationship with publishers is, I guess, I feel their pain. I understand what the tools are doing for them, and trying to convince an advertiser or a brand to put their trust in the publisher and put their trust in the tool. That's a journey, and I think I've always been the way I want Mantis to grow is that I want it to be part of a sort of like advisory and talk to people and have regular catch-ups with publishers, share ideas, because it wasn't 20 years ago when I started out, publishers didn't talk to each other. We all saw each other as competitors. We all didn't really communicate. But now with the platforms and publishers, there isn't that feeling anymore. And publishers are all going through the same challenges. They've all got the same tools. They're all using the same technology. So for us, it's about going, okay, what's your particular challenge currently? And that's why Mantis has got brand safety. It's got contextual, but also it's got other tools for publishers. So it's got like revenue generating tools for publishers, content recommenders for internal use, so they can use the data that we give them to power their hot topics or whatever they've got on their sites, and hopefully drive more traffic for them, get more people reading their content, because the days of kind of just saying this is the most trending story, actually we can add this is the most commented, or this is the most relevant to you, or and they can use all of that data to power their internal tools. And I think that's key, is that the relationship really becomes solid because we're part of their setup and their kind of makeup. And that comes with trust. Publishers have to trust that we're gonna see everything they've got. We're gonna help them work them out. But yeah, the relationship's really strong, and obviously I've known a lot of publishers and people over the years in publishers, so it makes it easier to have that conversation. But yeah, we're all facing the same challenges. I think the relationship becomes really strong when you're doing that, because we can really make context work.
I know there are definitely a number of people that work for publishers that would say there's no such thing as brand unsafe environments if you're advertising with a trusted, premium publisher. What would you say to that? Even a story that is covering politics or maybe violence or a war, that should still be brand safe because the journalism is of high quality, high checked. People are actually reading those articles in some ways more than any other article. So you certainly have the eyeballs. What would you how would you respond to that insinuation?
No, it's a good point. I think that's where the suitability comes in. Do I personally believe that it's suitable to advertise around an event so near in a time? No. So I think there's a timing thing with events as well. I think there's certain content that brands just don't want to be in, which I totally understand. But again, the 15% that don't use brand safety probably go in them environments and make the most of the traffic and the trending kind of things. But I think the reason context works so well with safety is because you're in that frame of mind. If you're reading a story that's a bad event in the world, you're not really in the frame of mind to buy a TV, right? It's just not the right environment. It's not the right place to put your advertising. So I agree. I don't think it's necessarily a brand safe piece of content, because the content is produced by a premium publisher. I think when it becomes, if there is content out there that is unbrand safe and it's not just the subject, it's because it's been written by and not an editorial professional. But I think in terms of I think it's more suitability and timing.
Gotcha. There are other verification brand safety vendors that exist in the marketplace. My question to you about those is, why do you have to exist? Because I would think if they're doing their job well and saying X is a brand safe platform or website, or it's not, then surely you wouldn't need to exist as if they were doing it well.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think the one reason I created Mantis in the first place is because I saw an opportunity and a gap that was not being fulfilled by the current tools. And I think that, again, it comes back to that context, that suitability, the reason I built thresholds in, and sort of you're allowed to upload your own rule set into Mantis and it follows your guidance. That wasn't really an option for me at the time. And I was kind of like, I need to. I'm a news publisher. I want to be able to do that. I also knew that context targeting and really highly targeted, engaged audience with the right context can perform really well. And we had lots of regional advertisers that wanted to target very niche subjects, and it was kind of like, how do we do that, rather than kind of the IAB taxonomy or the very high level kind of taxonomies. So yeah, the reason we existed because there was bits that were sort of missing from the tools that we currently had in market, and we just kind of carried on with them and further tweaked them.
And things that were brand safe were being marked as not brand safe, and vice versa.
Yeah, and again, I think the key thing for me was the keywords.
Yeah.
They did exist, and there was nothing that could challenge that understanding of that list. And I think that was a key thing for me, is like, yes, we want the list, but we need to understand it more, and we need to understand why. Why is brand A saying to us we will never advertise on news? It's not because they don't want to. It's because they haven't got the controls to make news safe. And that was a big conversation I had with some advertisers at the time, was how do we make news and celebrity safe for you and suitable for you? And that's where it come from. It was like, okay, let's try and build something that really does that. And it was actually an internal course that we were doing where we were asked the question, if you had reach for a period of time, what would you do? And I kind of come up with this tool and was like, this is what I do. And the CEO at the time went, go and build it. And I was like, okay, great. I'll do it now in real life. It was good. It solved a lot of challenges.
But it's been 5 years. It seems like this problem in some ways has only gotten worse for a lot of publishers. And so I'm curious, how would you sort of rank the progress that, not just that Mantis has achieved, but also that the wider industry has achieved or not achieved in terms of actually addressing these issues? Because to me, it sounds like, once you guys sort of went to market, at least, surely solutions would be there, and things would be getting better. Publishers would be able to get more revenue that they probably deserve, and advertisers would be able to place more ads where they would want to place them. And it seems like it's still getting worse. So I suppose if we have this conversation in 5 years, what needs to happen for us to have a completely different conversation, for us to be speaking much more positively?
Yeah, no, I really think it's a go to market to have a conversation like this. In the last 5 years, we've been focusing on internal challenges with Mantis, the publishers that have joined us, their challenges, and we've unlocked a lot of inventory for a lot of publishers that have joined us. I think again for us, we've invested, grown the team this year, and the traction and the progress I've seen in the last 6 months is astonishing compared to the last 5 years. And that's not because of products. The product's there. It's just now getting that to market and taking it out there. So I think for us, to have a more positive conversation in 5 years' time is essentially I want all the publishers that are using Mantis or part of the Mantis family to be surviving in the struggling environments of media and publishing in general. If I can help them generate revenue and unlock inventory, that's kind of a more positive piece. I also think brands need to be in environments where they've never tried before, and I think there's a lot of people and a lot of contacts to be in touch with. We're only a small team currently, but we are trying to get out there. We are talking to major agency groups about just trying different things and seeing these different areas, and I think there is traction happening. The amount of publishers that are now coming to us and saying, "What do you think about X, Y, and Z?" and that's really good. That shows a positive change, and I think just talking about it more, and I think a lot of people is disbelief that it still happens.
Mm-hmm. That's my reaction.
Yeah, and I think that's key. We need to get that across. That look, it is still happening, and like we said, look, we'll release stuff around Taylor Swift in the next few weeks, and we'll talk about the kind of the Paris stuff, the Euros. The more we understand it and talk to people on LinkedIn and other platforms, they're going to go, right, this is still happening, this shouldn't happen. And then you get people come to you and go, look, actually, can you try this or try that? We've had that with advertisers before. They've come to us and gone, we saw your piece. Can you show us what we're not getting access to or what we need to unlock? And then you realise that you're unlocking a lot. And I think the challenge is with the programmatic world, publishers don't necessarily know what they're missing out on either. And for us to go to them and go, look, this is still on a list, agency and advertiser and publisher, this is still on the list, so you're both not getting what you should get. That's the piece that needs to happen. And I think over the next 6 months, that's what we need to do as a team.
Last question we always ask on the podcast is, why are you passionate about media?
I've always loved media. I always loved data. I've got this understanding. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, you don't need marketing and advertising in the world." But if you walked into a shop and you had a lot of cans with no labels on, how do you know what one to go back to? That's always been my point of you need that marketing and advertising. I love the way that people use marketing and advertising. I buy a lot of stuff, so I'm the prime client for any marketing or advertising, but I've always been passionate about it, and I'm passionate about content. I want my children to grow up in this world, and I want them to have content outside of the platform. So I want them to have journalism. I want editorial staff to write good pieces. I want the journalist to have the time to do that, rather than worrying about, I've got to write a story about a dog on a skateboard. Rather, I want that deep understanding and that knowledge. And I think that's why I've been passionate about it. I think that there's definitely a job for my children growing up in this world. And I want to protect them from social media. And I think, again, for me, Mantis grows outside of just publishing in the future. And I think there's a lot of things like online harms, lots of stuff that's unsuitable that's being shown to people, and I think that needs to stop as well. And I think that's part of this kind of journey, is how do we do that? And I think that's why I've been passionate about it. And it changes every day. It's brilliant. Like literally every morning I get up, I don't know what I'm going to get. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it.
I'm cheating on second last question now. You mentioned you want to expand Mantis beyond just publishers. That means platforms. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think platforms or social media, that kind of area. I think there's a lot of work to be done in them areas. And I think for me, I think there's lots of stuff we can do. We're looking at other products outside of that in terms of kind of anything that Mantis can digest in terms of data. there's lots of stuff like we did simple tests of like it reads contracts and it can pick out terms, and you can have your own rule set to look at a contract, and it might take you a week to look at that contract, but actually Mantis can scan it in a minute. So there's stuff like that that's quite exciting. I think we've got a big enough job to solve in the media industry for now. And I say to the team that we'll focus on that first, but there's lots of opportunity out there, and I think there's lots of stuff that we can solutions we can come up with, challenges.
Gotcha. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Terry, thanks so much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader podcast. This episode was edited by our production partners, Trisonic. You can find and listen to all our episodes on our website at themedialeader.co.uk or wherever you get your podcasts. But just remember, please do subscribe to be notified when we release our next episode. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm editor Omar Oakes. Our executive producer is Jack Benjamin. See you next time.